the meeting of the Community Service and Public Safety Committee. It's Monday, November 13th, 10 a.m. And if you'd like to, please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All in favor, raise your right hand. And approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting, October 16, 2020?
So moved.
Favor, raise your right hand. Great. Kim, are there any appearances by citizens for today's meeting?
Yes, we have two. Mira Scott. Mira Scott?
She's not here, she's sick.
Okay. Kim Conti?
Good morning. My name is Kim Conti, and I'm the founder of Non-Toxic Neighborhoods, and my family and I moved back to Hilton Head July of 2022. Per the town's website, the Community Services and Public Safety Committee reviews, discusses specific related matters to public safety. Based on that description, I would like to please request that you all do some homework. We know homework's not fun. But if you could please research the carcinogenic and neurotoxic chemicals that are being sprayed in our parks. Just a few of these chemicals are glyphosate, dicamba, 2,4-D, and 2,4-D, unfortunately, is 50% of what makes up Agent Orange. Why are we using Agent Orange in our parks? As we do for countless municipalities around the country, we did a hazard assessment of the pesticides town staff confirmed that the contractors are using. And in my 9 years of doing hazard assessments, this unfortunately was the most alarming hazard assessment that we've done to date. We met with town staff in October of 2022, yet here we are over a year later with zero safeguards in our parks and our beaches. As safety committee members, you should also be made aware that the town is using public funds to purchase the same chemical that Bayer was just ordered to pay $332 million as a result of Roundup cancer trial to one individual. And this carcinogenic herbicide is still being used in our parks. We have demonstrated around the country that you can have beautiful parks, baseball fields, and open space that meet community expectations without the use of synthetic pesticides. I set up a meeting with Clemson University this week, and the town has secured an opportunity that we worked with Clemson regarding pollinator protection because monarchs turns out winter in South Carolina, and it makes it one of 3 places in the world where this happens. In case you don't have time to do your homework, I have brought and gave Kim copies of the hazard assessment. Remember that you all took an oath to protect public health and safety as elected officials. And the fact is the town is not living up to the environmental standards set by Charles Fraser. Town attorneys should look into who is responsible for the use of public funds and pesticide use and the current pesticide non-compliance with the state. Thank you.
Anyone else on our list? No. Is there an opportunity for anyone else in the chambers who'd like to speak? Yes. Please feel free. Yes.
I'm Pamela Martin Ovens, and I've lived on Hilton Head Island for over 45 years. I want to say thank you, Brian McElwee, for testing a way to control the rat population without rodenticides. Hopefully, this will spread to the entire island. Thank you all for beginning the process of making our island a better place to live that is safe from glyphosates, 2,4-D, found in Agent Orange, paraquat, and other poisons that are listed as carcinogens by the World Health Organization. We do not need to use these dangerous chemicals on our island. Please transition to non-harmful ways to kill weeds. We want a chemical-free environment for our children, pets, and those we love. This decision would not only provide our islanders with a better life, but would attract more mindful tourists. Thank you.
Anyone else? We can move on to new business, which is a consideration of a resolution adopting environmentally friendly landscaping and grounds maintenance practices. And Brian McAwee is here to make a presentation to us. He's the Director of Public Projects and Facilities.
Thank you all. Good morning. Again, Brian McAwee, Director of Public Projects and Facilities. The first part of this presentation is pretty similar to what I gave you all, full council in September, a quick overview of what we do. And then you can see the two items, bullet points for discussion are regarding an integrated pest management program, or IPM. I'm just going to keep it brief and call it IPM. I have to stand over here.
One side or the other.
And then the other item that we're going to talk about is a discussion on a trial study that we'd like to perform on the island to test the efficacy of synthetic versus organic pesticides. So a quick introduction. The town is always looking to be a leader in protecting the environment. It's long known for being a leader of this. We pride ourselves on being environmentally conscious and a community that promotes the natural beauty and our unique ecosystem. Our residents and our visitors value the eco-friendly practices that we have on the island, and it's something that we hope to carry forward. As such, Town Council has identified environmental sustainability as a strategic action plan item in the 2023-2025 strategic action plan. And I have it highlighted here. What we're talking about today is to assess and implement an environmentally friendly landscape and grounds maintenance best practices program. So to date, and I didn't introduce a few folks I have on staff, Whitaker Knight is our landscape and grounds manager, and Mike Sherry is our public services manager, and today is his first day. And so an hour in, he gets to view this, and they will be helping me to implement whatever we decide to move forward with. So working with Whitaker, we did a review of federal and state regulations. We reviewed our current contracts, as well as our service areas. Like Kim said, we did an inventory and assessment of our current pesticide use. And we also researched various other programs throughout the country. You can see here Palm Beach, City of Irvine, California, Marin County, California. We've talked to Clemson University, and we've had meetings with Kim and her team. So taking a step back and looking at the regulations that we have to abide by, the EPA is basically in charge of reviewing and authorizing the use of insecticides, pesticides, herbicides. As such, they dictate that down to the state of South Carolina. South Carolina has a code that precludes the town from basically having a ban on any pesticide, herbicide, insecticide. It's all managed through the State Crop Pest Commission, and you can see the highlighted ordinance here, a local ordinance pertaining to the subject matter assigned by law to the commission, whether or not in conflict or void. Basically, we can't ban anything on the island. It has to come from the state. However, we can work with our contractors to come up with a different use of pesticides or organic chemicals. Kiowa Island is where I learned this from. They tried to ban rodenticides. They were told they couldn't per this ordinance, and they worked with all their contractors to use something a little more friendly, and so it didn't transfer over to the bobcats because they were losing bobcats that were eating the rats that were eating the rodenticides. So you can't do this. We just have to work and partner with our contractors. So our current contracts, we have 9 landscaping contracts with 4 different contractors. They maintain all of basically the roads, medians, pathways, parks, facilities, and grounds. You can see some of the roads that we have here. We not only maintain town roads, we also maintain state and county roads. New Orleans Road is a county road. obviously Cross Island Parkway is a state road. So we maintain all that, as well as our town parks, beach parks, open spaces, preserve lands, our town hall facilities. There are some folks working outside right now, and we're getting ready to do a contract for our fire and rescue and fire station, 7 fire stations. And then I showed this at the council meeting, but we've developed a GIS map that will be shared with the public soon, and it shows, if you click on, let's say Honeyhorn, it'll show you who the contractor is, who the contact is, their phone number, what day they treat that site. There's still some things we want to add on here, such as contract number, expiration date, and then eventually we like to add the schedule, so you know what days they're going to spray or not spray or whatever. Right now it just says work days, but that's kind of vague. You don't know what they're doing. I'd like to get into the details a little bit more on that. So a really cool map developed by our GIS staff, and I appreciate them for that. So as we assess these contracts, we realized that of the 9 that we currently have, they all have similar but inconsistent language. A lot of them reference using maybe a specific fertilizer, some reference just how you should do it, when you should do it. Some just say they should use integrated pest management, what I'm getting ready to talk about. And it's really vague. Some are a little bit more specific. I know, Councilman Bryson, you mentioned the old one for Jarvis Creek. I don't think that contract's valid anymore, but it did specifically call out playgrounds. So one thing we realized is we need to have these contracts say the same thing for our benefit, for the public's benefit, also for our contractors. If Brightview is doing the north end, and it's one set of rules, and then they do the south end, and it's another set of rules, how do they do that? So we need to get that language more consistent.
Is it possible to ask questions as he goes along, or is preference to wait till the full presentation is done?
Brian, are you okay with that
Yeah.
interruption?
Yeah.
Sure. Go.
Yeah, so with regard to the current contracts, I know we were sent over 200 pages worth of contract materials, and I'll be the first to admit I did not look at every one of those pages. But this appears to be somewhat of a summary. So you say the current contracts have generally the same language and can be amended. So I know later on you have a time period, but what I'm concerned about is when the renewals might be happening. And I guess my first question is, any of them have an automatic 1-year renewal? And how are those time periods set out for the various contracts that we have? And when would we be able to insert new language about a new policy?
So I think we can pretty much amend them when we want. I don't know if any of them automatically renew, because there's generally a cost increase that they do each year. And so we evaluate that and then renew it. But we can evaluate that. I can bring that back to you. You can tell I forgot to fill out some of these because I meant to put the full terms and when we executed them. But so that first one for town hall, it is a 5-year term, and that's as long as we can go. So it doesn't auto renew. That term is for that cycle.
And do you know if any of the other ones have a fixed term like that without an automatic renewal?
Yeah, some might be a little less, like a 3-year term, but I will make sure I have that spelled out.
And I think it's also important, I see Mr. Gruber kind of nodding his head, to know about amending them, because we can't amend them on our own. We have to have the other party agree to it. So I think we need to look into that process to make these all consistent, especially since I do hope we're going to be adopting a new policy that would be incorporated in these contracts. And maybe you're going to cover that when you get to the timeline, but that was one of the major questions I had with without having to look at all the 200 pages of contract documents. Thank you.
Yeah. And I know we've tried to, with some of the more recent ones like Town Hall and South Island, I know we've tried to make the language more consistent, but some of the older ones, you definitely see the differences. So as we renew and as we rebid these, make sure that contract language is the same. That's something we have to do.
And I think you said you're in the process of getting ready to do something, a new contract with some fire stations. So
yes, ma'am.
Where are we in that process?
I think Whitaker gave me a draft of the RFP, and I just need to review it. It might actually be advertised
Okay, but somewhere in that process, we're not to the end of the process where we've signed a contract. We're in that process, so we could insert new language regarding a
We
policy.
could, if we can get this policy adopted and move forward with that language, that'd be good. We could do that then.
Okay, well, I'll wait till we hear about the timeline then. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Also, you can see the contract service areas. I showed you the map. The island is huge, right? It's gigantic. If we overlaid it versus a city like Savannah, our service area is gigantic. It's big. And so we probably need to reassess some of that to see if we can reduce some of those service areas to add more contractors to help our level of service. We also currently don't have any requirement to post signage after application of pesticides within our contract. I know that's something that we've talked about previously.
A question related, I guess, to what Patsy was bringing up. And Josh, in terms of those contracts, is there anything akin to how we approach stormwater, where there was one contract, same language, all of the participants in that program kind of were on the same page? Is there a place, so other than the hard work that Brian and his team are doing, is there a place for Curtis, yourself, et cetera, to be working on a rather consistent contract for all of the subcontractors to be engaged in?
Yeah, once we have a policy, then we can look at incorporating that policy as standard language within all of our contracts. And so that's what we're working on now, is identifying that policy, and then we can go back either through amendment to existing contracts or at the outset of new bid opportunities to make sure to plug that language in.
So then that's a longer process. So we're not, or it's not, I'm unclear. Are these existing contracts where if there were particular aspects of it that would be beneficial in terms of pesticide use, for example, we could insert with agreement an amendment into each of those as the bigger project is worked on?
They are. They're all amendable at the agreement of both parties, so the town and the contractor. And that's actually something that does happen from time to time. We'll amend the scope of a contract to either add new areas or to add additional services that were maybe not included before. And so it's just a matter of sitting down with the contractor, identifying what that price adjustment is, and then building that in as an addendum to the existing contract.
All right.
Yeah, and then making sure that language stays consistent with future
Just throughout
contracts.
the,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I like.
that's the end
so-
goal in my mind, at
Yeah,
least.
you were talking about the stormwater contracts with the PEDs, right? The POAs,
Yeah.
making that consistent.
Yeah.
So staff knows, so the contractor knows,
Right.
there's no gray area.
Not 200 pages of different language to read through.
So,
Madam Chair, I'm sorry if I could ask one more question. At the same time, you're looking at the language and the timing. Let's look at the termination provisions if they won't agree to amend.
As standard language in all of our contracts, we have both termination for cause and termination for convenience. So we always have the ability, if we're not able to come to a similar understanding of what the services should be, that we can terminate the contract and rebid it out with new language.
And is there like a 30-day notice for that, or?
There is a notice provision in there, and we have to pay costs that have been incurred up until that point. That there's language in there that talks about that. Typically, we prefer to work with the contractor to identify an addendum that we can both work with, but there is that ability to contract or to terminate if necessary.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to know about what that maybe standard language is. Okay, thank you.
okay, so, like I said, we evaluated the current pesticide use. I believe I had an attachment in your packet that gave a little bit more information about each one of these. I didn't want to waste slide space, but those are the fertilizers that we use, the insecticides that we use. Here's the herbicides that we use. If you have specific questions about some of these, I'd probably have to bring up Whitaker to help talk about that. I know Ranger Pro is the one that has glyphosate in it. I'm not sure about the chemical that Kim mentioned that was also used in Agent Orange. I don't know which herbicide that's in. I can try to get better information on that. That one was new to me, so I'm not really equipped to talk about that one right now.
Speed zone.
Speed zone, okay. We will look into that one for you.
So that assessment that was done, does that include an evaluation of all of those chemicals that are listed or herbicides that are listed on this
In your
page?
packet, Whitaker put together this. It talks about what it's used for, what its target organism is, whether it's I'll get into this a little bit later, whether it's a caution or a warning or a highly toxic, whatever danger level it's at.
That research staff has done, or is that an assessment that was an outside assessment?
Staff. Again, we've been researching this, talking with Clemson, talking with other communities. We've instructed our contractors to not spray on town playgrounds, within the dog parks, along water or marsh edges, on town property. We've also instructed them to not broadcast spray. They do not boom spray, broadcast spray on the sport fields such as Chaplain Crossings, Parker Field, et cetera. And we continue to work with certified professionals in this industry to implement these. And so that's where I'll bring the integrated pest management program to you and talk about that right now. So there's 4 different types of management that you can use. Cultural, such as you rotate crops, you use drought-resistant plants, you use pest-resistant plants, whatever, native species. You have the physical, mechanical methods, such as, let's say, aerating your field, making sure you can put in better top dressing, stuff like that, just the mechanical means. Then you have your biological and then your chemical, and the chemical is kind of what we're talking about more than anything. But all of these fall under this integrated pest management plan. And so whenever you look into something like this, almost all the literature that I have talks about you have to have this integrated pest management plan, policy, whatever, and that's what you should follow. And even our contracts speak to it, but there's no definition to it, and it doesn't refer you to anything else. And so that's what part of that language that I'd like to add to the contracts. So again, it's a system of managing pests using careful consideration and integration of all available pest control techniques. Chemical control is a component of that, even with organic chemicals. And so the goal of this will be to minimize the use of the chemicals on town maintained land, but use them responsibly when we have to use them. So any form of chemical applied to town properties will follow the principles that will be in this policy. Currently, we do use some methods of IPM practices. Our contracts call for mulching, fertilizer, weed and insect control, plant selection, like I said, using native species, selecting disease and drought-resistant plants, where we plant things. You know, Whitaker's been doing a great job of revising and using better, not using the same palette, using a little bit different, more native stuff that will survive here. So that's what we're currently working on. And I showed this to you all in September. This is just kind of a definition of what a conventional or what you might get at the hardware store, you know, the man-made stuff, the Roundup. It's altering the chemical structure to last a little longer, to be a little bit more effective. You know, Roundup is systemic. It will attack the weed. It'll go down to the roots. It'll kill the whole plant. It'll last longer. The organic stuff might have to apply more often to get the same result. They'll break down more rapidly because they haven't been altered, so their structure is organic. It will break down faster.
Get the same result?
We will find out when we do the trial study. So here, and all this, I have a link to, I'm pulling this information from Clemson's website. Though organic insecticides may be less damaging to the environment, they're still a pesticide. And in some of these cases, it could be more dangerous to the applicator. A lot of the organic stuff is an acid. So the person who's applying it really has to be careful and wear their PPE, personal protective equipment. That's all things that we spell out in the contract that they should be wearing those things. And again, they all come with this signal word, caution, warning, or danger. So part of this IPM, we want to consider projects with caution and not use things that come with warning or danger, because those may be more harmful to either the environment, the applicator, the user of the park, et cetera. So with the trial study, we would like to undergo a study at either Chaplain Crossings or any other park or facility recommended by the committee and council. Again, we'll try to seek the efficacy of the synthetic versus an organic pesticide. We'll know how much we'll have to apply, the schedule for that, how much it'll cost. And then I'd like to create a kind of a time-lapse video to show what it looks like over this course of whether it's 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, to actually show what it looks like. Because we do have a certain standard that we like to abide by, and I think that video will show that. I've talked to Clemson. They are actually putting out feelers to see if we can get a grad student to perform this for us. We would obviously pay for the chemicals and pay for the work. If I'd like to do that as an impartial third party, but also we have one of our contractors say they'd be willing to do it. There is a little hesitancy because they don't want to be blamed like, oh, they fudged the results or they used a Bayer product and so they're getting a kickback or something like that. We want to make sure that it's impartial and unbiased. So the next steps, today was just a discussion for this, to get it started. What all would you like to see in the IPM policy or the framework? What would you like to see in the trial study? I think I already have a draft plan written, but this input will really help me refine that. And I think I could turn it around and bring it to you in December. And then whether a December or January consideration by council. And then we'd love to get this going for the growing season in the spring, so we can show how it works. And so with that, I'll answer any questions or go back and talk about anything else.
Thank you. Alex?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Zach, we thank you as well for all the hard work and new and old staff members to the conversation. Of course, we appreciate the public being a part of this. I guess first thing, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, Brian. So the EPA is the agency that is controlling this statewide. And currently, sort of conflicting with home rule, we cannot ban, okay, but we can enforce certain products based on how we write our contracts, correct?
Correct. So we can't do a island-wide ban. Like, it would be almost impossible to enforce from our level, right? Like, how do we go into sea pines and enforce? Like, Bob would have to be out there every day watching someone spray. But the rule, the code 46-9-110 says we are not allowed to have a local ordinance that bans something that's regulated by the state.
So as we continue to get smart on this, I guess a couple things that I'm curious to know. One is, are there any lobbying groups within the state of South Carolina that are pushing to change this ordinance so that municipalities can have home rule on this? Okay, and you don't have to answer this right now. I'm just throwing it in the air.
Not aware
okay?
of that. Yeah.
And the other one is, are there any other states, country, that are currently pushing in a direction where there's home rule when it comes to the IPM management, okay?
Okay. I can look that up.
So, again, I'm not looking for responses, I'm just throwing off what's on my mind at the moment. The other one, and I support the trial study, okay? I think we need to have some data in place so we can better understand this as we are moving forward. Thing that I'd like to also understand as we're going through that process is how this may affect us from a budgetary standpoint, okay? 'Cause, when you say more applications, to me, that may or may not mean more funding, right? Just curious to know if that gets lost in the rounding, or is it significant enough to where we have to have this discussion at a budgetary level as well, okay?
Everything I've found shows it will have a budgetary impact.
I think we need to understand that impact.
And I think that test will, whether we pick an acre or a half acre or whatever, and we can multiply that out, or we can just simply bid as an alternate and you'll know what the price is. You know, we could say, treat it conventionally, treat it organically, and let the contractors dictate. I mean, it is what it is when they submit a bid, so.
I think that's important as we move along. And I like the fact that that we are moving in this direction, as I stated before. And I guess the other one is sort of off topic here, as we sort of look at how we can bring our contracts together so that they all are saying the same thing. Around landscaping is where I'm going. Yes, this is important, and yes, this has a public safety component to it, absolutely. But the line of sight issues that we have on Hilton Head also have a public safety component. I'd like to see that sort of uniform as we move forward with our contracts as well, because some
Making sure
companies
we
do.
keep that clear at the, like, ingress and egress to
Yes.
certain streets. And
Absolutely, yeah, okay, perfect, thank you.
I hope Mike's taking notes. I don't even think I gave him a pen or a notepad yet.
This might be a total recall.
We have a couple.
Patsy?
Yes. First of all, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for bringing it to us today so we can take another major step along the way here. A couple of questions and observations. First of all, I appreciate the trial study. I haven't carefully thought about all our different parks, but I am thinking about Chaplin having a dog park. And I know that I received several emails about folks who've been walking their dogs and noticing the spraying of certain pesticides or herbicides, which is concerning to them. And so I'm thinking maybe Chaplin might be a good place because we also have a lot of kids there. But I'm open for committee discussion on another park other than Chaplin. I just picked that one out because you had it on your screen. I think, Madam Chair, maybe we ought to come back to that. The other one that folks have mentioned to me is the Mid-Island track, which is mostly in a natural state. We're, I guess, looking at phase 1 now, but a lot of folks walk their dogs over there as well. It's not as active a park, you know, with regard to children being there and other kind of activities. I'm thinking instead, as I understand it, you've notified our contractors about where not to spray. And I think it would be advisable, if we've not done it already, to put a notice about that on the town's website. And then if folks see spraying that they're concerned about, a number to call or a place to email.
Okay.
I think that'd be very helpful right now to let the public know what we are doing, and if you see issues, where to report it. I mean, I guess my HHI is another place they could do it, but I think it would be very helpful to the public at this point to know that we're being proactive about that. The other thing I noticed in the materials that were sent on the contracts, that the RFP issued in June of 2023 does have the sample standard agreement. So if that is what we're using, then there is some language about the term, a period of 1 year commencing on the date of execution may be renewed for up to 4 one-year periods. If that's our standard agreement, I think that's where we ought to start. And then also some language about amendment and termination. And then if there isn't, and I haven't looked at all the language of this contract, but if there isn't, then there ought to be something in there about complying with town policies. And if you have I'm not trying to practice law here, but if there's some, it appears as though if you have some general reference to complying with town policies, maybe that's a way to provide some additional information. How's that?
Yeah, I think Exhibit A is where we can really get into the weeds, if you will, part
Right.
of the fun, of what we want them to do, because that's where we can show the scope of services that we expect out of that contract, whether, and specifically identify the IPM, and we can even attach the policy and program
Yeah,
to
sure.
that as an exhibit, so they know exactly where and when we
Right.
expect them to do certain things.
Yes, I'm looking at Mr. Gruber to convey to the town attorney that perhaps we ought to look at some more general language until we have a policy adopted. Anyhow, suggestion there. The other thing, I'm glad that Mr. Brown asked about the cost, because that was in my list too. That I think it might be helpful. And certainly with a trial location, we can look at some cost as well. But do we need to be thinking about the upcoming budget, which starts, as staff knows and celebrates, it happens after the first of the year. Start work on that. do we need to put some placeholder in there for perhaps increase of costs? The other thing that I think we need to know about is how it works, and I'm glad we have new folks here today and folks who are actually out in the field. Tell us how the inspections will work with regard to the contractor's work and what they're doing or not doing. I did find, and I've been sent a lot of materials, and I try to read as much as I can, but I know that we've asked about neighboring. Are there any other towns or cities or counties in South Carolina that have a similar policy? Or what about neighboring states? And I did find, and thank you, I was just able to share it last night, the town of Carrboro in North Carolina has what they call a least toxic integrated pest management, IPM, and plant healthcare, PHC. And so I don't know whether there's any helpful language in there, but if there's other language, maybe through Municipal Association of South Carolina or through NIMLO or somebody like that, maybe if there are other similar policies that we can take a look at. And I appreciate that you've done a lot of work on one already, but.
Yeah, I've found some policies from, Kim's actually shared it, good resources in California. I think City of Irvine was really good. I think Costa Mesa followed their IPM policy. Palm Beach, Florida has a good one. I asked Clemson if they had any sample ones in the state. They weren't aware of any, but they were going to be on the lookout for me too. I think MASC is a great idea. I didn't think about that. I might ask Josh if he can help me get on that listserv and if I can figure out who to reach out to.
Yep, and even above Municipal Association of South Carolina, there'd be a nationwide association of towns and counties.
Many articles written on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot.
You can literally get, lost in the weeds. Huh? Right. And then the other thing I think that is of some concern, in addition to something on our website about when instructions were given and how to who and how to contact if you see something and are concerned about it, is some sort of notice provision when there's certain spraying going on at a site, so that if I don't look at the website every day and look at the GIS and go like, oh, are they spraying at the park I'm going to today, take my kids or my dogs, then some sort of signage to require that the contractors put up about spraying.
Correct, and I think I said that in the staff report. Whitaker and I just talked about this on Thursday. How do we want to best go about doing that? I think it's a good idea. I don't see why we don't. Now, we have to either rely a lot on the contractor if they put something out to take it back out 72 hours later or 15 minutes later. 15 minutes, it could be ready to go. Or do we want to have something up in the kiosks at the park that kind of has like maintenance schedules, and so people can just go and read it anytime they want. This is what we spray, this is when we do it, this is how we, we're still kind of working through that one, but I want to get that started pretty much right away. And I do want to make that a contract standard.
That'd be great. Yep, we'll rely on you all to work out the logistics of that, but the
I think
notice.
in California, they have a
is key.
specific placard that they have to post when they do it, and it has like the little, like what you're using, how long it's out there, stuff like that. And so
Right.
maybe we can mimic that.
I'm more worried about the timing of putting it up as opposed to the timing of taking it down. So.
Make sure they do it right away when they start applying.
Right. If it stays up a few more days, at least there's some notice and someone can inquire further as opposed to not knowing at all. So. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
A very good presentation, Mr. McAwee, and I think I'm impressed with the depth and scope and breadth of what you've looked into. Essentially, as you state, you're trying to substitute contract for what you cannot do by ordinance. Are there any downsides that go along with doing it by contract that you're aware of?
No. Like I said, Kiowa, they're a good example of how they got it to work. They actually have, I think they have like a logo that, so anybody, like any business, if they don't use a certain rodenticide that transfers over to the Bobcats, they have like a little sticker that they put on their door to show that they're like a Bobcat-friendly business. Our contractors could have something similar. We're working with the town. We want to be environmentally conscious, and they work for us, so they would have to follow our rules.
contractors generally responsive to this approach?
They are. They've been really great to work with so far. Again, it will come down to cost. They all said it'll cost a little bit more. So we just have to amend the contracts to make sure we're equitable.
And as previously mentioned, I am interested in inspection or following up to make sure they're doing what they say they're doing.
Yeah, so those two guys right back there, they are my eyes and ears in the field, and, you know, it'll be up to them to follow up with the contractors. We have some provisions in there about, they're supposed to provide a schedule of what they're going to do each week or each month. I'm not sure that's being followed as closely as we could, and we'll make sure that we stay on top
It's
of it.
often
Yeah.
a hitch area, yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of great questions from the committee and terrific answers from you, Brian. We appreciate all the hard work, and we know that this is a significant endeavor to really represent our island as environmentally conscious and protect our children and our residents, so and our pets, obviously. I have a question about the trial, and you mentioned a grad student, so there'd be a non-bias and any research. I certainly appreciate all of those protocols. The question I have is, is it the grad student then who would be doing the application and overseeing that particular park, or would they be working with the, can you
Yeah,
clarify a little bit?
I haven't figured that part out of it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so that conversation just happened about a week ago when I talked to Clemson, talked to their pesticide group. If we can't find a student who would want to perform that, and I guess they would monitor, the monitoring of it. I don't want the grad student out there applying stuff.
I can see it as a great project for them,
Yeah.
you know. for
But they could
education.
do all the costs, they could do the scheduling, they could take the pictures, they could do all the monitoring of the data and then present to us a finding, a fact, I guess. Because if we're the ones doing it, I could see there being like, oh, well, it is biased towards a certain way or another.
I see there a real benefit for everyone by bringing in someone like a grad student and get tremendous amount out of it. So I appreciate the concept. I was just curious about how it would be implemented.
Yeah, and so if I got any further feedback from you all, that's what I'd bring back to you, because if I can get more information from them, then I will present to you, this is the trial study. So this is just the discussion, and then I'm gonna, if you say
Like
no to
exercise.
Chaplain, okay, where would you like me to do it? And then I'm gonna outline it, and that's what I'll bring back to you.
Which park or which area of the island has the most varied plants, animals, et cetera, that would give you the greatest amount of,
I'm not sure, but like each part of the island has different soil components or soil structure. So, I think we have to understand what we're dealing with. Chaplain is a lot of fill in there, and I'm not sure if the soil is very good. Crossings probably filled in some wetland. I know the Cross Island, that's where a lot of that material came from. Mid-Island might be one of the most varied at this point, given how
we're
it's
about to
been.
take it, right?
Yeah. And what I would like to do is when we pick the area, it would block people from coming into it. We would put up like an orange construction fence. We'd put sign, trial study in place, please do not enter, spraying occurring. We would make it very identifiable, like don't come into this spot. So wherever we do that,
I'd be
that'll
really
a bit of an
interested in the
aesthetic.
results of all of this. I know that others can put together the research project and make it valuable to us. I guess when I would be reading the results, I'd be interested in knowing whether or not those are results for a particular situation in one area, and would it be applicable across the island with so many, that, again, just thoughts,
That's why I
nothing really.
think multiple sites would be good
Right.
if we could.
I feel like that might be the best type of project, but I'll leave that for y'all to figure out going forward. Let's see. I think at this point, you have presented us with enough that I don't need to keep asking questions. Complicated, you'll come back to us. Is everyone on this committee in agreement? You can raise your hand, I guess, is the best way to do it, because all you're looking for is feedback from us,
If there's
correct?
anything else you'd like me to add, or any other locations, or is there a particular component to that integrated pest management policy plan that you'd like me to add.
What you said about Mid-Island, that seems to be top consideration for location. It also has the advantage, there's no organized activities there.
Correct. Yep.
How would that be impacted, though, with the fact that we're moving into phase one, which is basically
I'd pick a corner.
pick a corner somewhere?
Where nothing's happening. Most of the phase one stuff is over towards Dillon Road, in that corner. So I'd pick a further corner away from everybody and keep it away from the paths and, just kind of tuck it away somewhere.
With, so you're looking for direction from us as far as which parks to use as case, right? And now that we have Mid-Island on the table for discussion, I guess my question would be, at the moment, whoever the contractor is for Mid-Island, are they doing this more detailed landscaping at the moment, or is it more of a rough?
It's rough.
Okay, so, not that I'm opposed to Mid-Island, okay, because it may offer up a different type of experience, but I am concerned that you will now have to deal with a contractor on a different level than what you already have with these parks that have the detailed spraying and application that's already happening.
If we can get it through the grad student, and I can just pay them to figure out which contractor, otherwise we probably just do another contract, and because I just want one contractor to do it. Mid-Island is one contractor. If I did it at Crossings, that's a total different. I don't want two different contractors doing it. I want one contractor doing the trial study at each location.
So I just offer that to the committee. I think we're looking for some sort of pace in making this happen. I don't want to complicate things for staff. Destined these two parks for a reason, and if there's a timeline associated with it, I'm more inclined to leave it up to staff as far as the two suggested, unless they can make an argument that they need more testing sites so that we can get this done sooner than later and have data back in front of us.
I think it was just to show multiple locations with different factors at each one. One's a sport field, one's kind of rough. You might have more weeds growing over there. It's just to kind of broaden the scope of it, that's all.
Do we have a contractor who does more of our parks and facilities than another one?
I would say, yeah. Brightview probably does more.
So maybe that would be, look at what locations they do, then it's been a long time since I took a science class, but I remember that you have to have a lot of control so you don't have so many variables.
Right,
So,
yeah.
there we go, okay, I get an A for today, huh?
And they're the ones who have offered to perform this for us.
Okay, well, perfect, okay. So maybe that's a way to go?
Are they responsible for Chaplain? Brightview, no, it's, I see it all the time. Carolina, yeah, I see their trucks there.
Again, we would
Yeah.
just work with them and be like, hey, we're doing a trial study. You don't have to touch this part. Don't come in here, don't spray anything near it. We try to keep it as controlled as possible.
Where does Brightview do their work?
I think they do South Island, they do
They
Town
do
Hall.
sea pines.
I mean, yeah, privately.
Yeah, I'm talking about our park, so Low Country Celebration Park, maybe?
So they do the South Island contract, Town Hall, William Hilton Parkway, and then for parks, most of their parks are like on South Island. So you've got Crossings Park, Bristol Park, Thomas Rose Park. Celebration Park is an individual contract all by itself. Something like Coastal does that one.
There you
Coastal.
there you go. There's the map. So I just filtered it by Brightview, and so everything that's selected is where.
So it's by areas, is where you have contractors. So who does like Mid-Island and Chaplain area? More than
Greenery
one?
does Mid-Island, and Chaplain is Carolyn's.
Carolyn.
Potentially, though, we could work with a contractor on, if we wanted to do Mid-Island track, we could just section off an area, and if another contractor's servicing it, then we just say, hey, leave this place alone, because the town's doing work here, and then we could, figure out a way to do business with whoever we end up partnering with.
Yeah. You were saying, Brian. So you've, as Alex said, highlighted two parks, Chaplain and Crossings.
Do you
Want a specific part chosen by us right now?
I would just like your input, and
Okay.
your guidance towards that.
Okay.
If you felt one is completely inappropriate, but, due to sporting events or kids, it's just what I'm recommending. I didn't want to recommend Low Country Celebration Park. It's kind of like our jewel. Chaplain Park is a sport complex. I know that might be
A lot of activity.
a lot of activity, yeah. So I just wanted your input. If there was one particular place where you're like, absolutely not Brian, then I'd be like, got it.
But seems like, I think maybe leave it up to staff to study a couple of areas, but it sounds like, based on the types of use and the type of, there's different waterways, there's different vegetation, different soils as you're talking about. So I think we ought to have at least 2 different types in there, best I can describe it.
I think Mid Island is we could just pick one of these locations kind of off the beaten path and just fence it off and study it there.
Are we all good with Mid-Island then?
And maybe another one where there's different uses so that we have a better test. Like you ought to have 2.
In Crossings, we have this field right here. I'd have to check with Island Rec to see what the
Right, about the-
programming is right now. But again, if we could fence off a little area of it that wouldn't be used, I think Crossings would be another good one.
Maybe there's some fields away from where the baseball area is that might be able to
Yeah,
use.
like these two areas right in here.
I know one of them, I think it's a bigger triangle. I can't remember, I worked out there with
We
a
also
trainer one
have,
time.
Barker Field Extension. That's a possibility. I'm trying to think of open spaces where we could.
Right.
fence off.
Right, okay.
Now the town owns Barker Field proper now too. So those fields could be a good testing location.
So what's a consensus? We need to give Brian some direction here. He's asked for us, and then rather than the 2 points he gave us to consider, we've broadened that. It sounds,
Something really briefly as far as what we do with pilots nationally. Because we want them where children are. The whole point is to protect children and pets, and we don't want pets out. We want really good conditions to show the benefits of utilizing organic controls.
have y'all had those conversations with Brian and his team?
Yes.
So he's familiar with
So
that?
like Central Park in New York, organically lazy. So we work with the Parks Department to get them the tools they need, and we train the landscapers. And Brightview actually, the great thing about Brightview is we work with Brightview directly already. In Costa Mesa, we transition to baseball fields. So they usually give us parks that have compaction and a lot of use. We usually get kind of the worst case scenario. So that's the benefit, is to show and demonstrate, the need to move away from chemicals like Roundup and the unintended costs of using chemicals like Roundup.
So in y'all's conversations, you've taken all of that into account in terms of the
I'll have to
presentation?
follow back up with Kim to get that. If she has a test pilot project that I could reach out to whoever performed it and get how they did it, that would help guide me for sure.
All right. Do we have a consensus? Brian needs a direction in terms of at least 1, perhaps 2 locations. Betsy, would you like to make a suggestion?
I think at least 2 locations with some different types of activities, if you will, subject to staff taking a look at it and consulting with non-toxic neighborhoods for suggestions. How about that?
If all else fails, you can use my backyard.
Well, that's an option, my goodness. Is that enough for you to take away?
If you all think this is a good path forward with the IPM policy and plan, and then I'll come back and we'll tell you where and try to get a guiding document for the trial study, and then we'll just reassess.
I think you're on a good path. You've done a lot of research. You've had a lot of good input by people who are concerned here on the island. Certainly, council seems to support the idea moving forward with the trial study so that we can get some real results, know what it's going, the impact of the cost is going to be, et cetera.
Yeah.
All of those details I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is what we'd like to see you spend some of your time.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, if I could make sure there's 2 other notes that the committee agrees with, and that is looking at our standard contract language and being mindful of, if we have them out for bid now, to include something in there that could encompass the future policy. And then also notices to the public now. So,
I think that Josh had taken that note, and in terms of notice, I think that you've been very thoughtful about the fact that folks need to know, want to know.
Yeah,
even more.
I'll work with them and we'll try to get that like ASAP. And hopefully by the next time I come in front of you, it will be live and we can show you. So,
Thank
all
you.
right.
Thank you so much. All right. So our next agenda item under new business is a consideration of a resolution regarding the Rotary Community Center proposal. And Town Manager Josh Gruber is going to make that presentation for us.
Good morning. So I want to walk everyone through these materials. Back in late June, the town received correspondence from representatives of the Rotary Club of Hilton Head regarding opening a discussion channel to look at potentially partnering with their fundraising for a multi-use community center to be located on the Mid-Island track. In September, representatives from the Rotary submitted formal correspondence to the town outlining this proposal. That information is included within your backup materials. And essentially what it calls for is the development of a fairly large multi-use community center in keeping with the adopted master plan as one of the program elements for that particular park. That can essentially be used to accommodate their vision in states that it would be 450 people theater style, 250 people with tables set for meals, and then 150 people in an outdoor setting or somewhere thereabouts. And that in exchange for partnering with the town in this capacity, the Rotary Club would work with the other Rotary chapters on the island to fundraise an estimated $750,000, which is what they believe the upfit costs for that building would be in terms of furniture and equipment and AV supplies. There was a couple schedules that were included there just as examples. And then a site plan, again, just for illustrative purposes to kind of tee up this discussion. So that hopefully paints the picture of what the proposal is that was sent to the town, the information that's come along with it, and then we want to turn it over to you to help discuss it from a policy standpoint.
Well, thank you. I have a couple of questions. Maybe I'll start first this time. In the information, it's mentioned consistent with the master plan.
Yes.
Consistent in the master plan in terms of the idea of a concept or a size, location?
More program element. So in the master plan, it mentioned having a community center as part of the park. There's no real specifics in terms of size, location, anything like that. It's just one of the program elements that was part of what was presented as the master plan for that park.
So when we think of this, as it's been requested, we're not thinking of it in a specific location at all.
Not at this point in time.
And when we think of this as it's been presented, there was nothing in that master plan that spoke to a size. So 400 and whatever the number was, sorry, I just lost it.
450.
Yes, 450, et cetera. That was never contemplated in the original master plan. So therefore, the size, the other elements of that master plan could be impacted by this project if the scope isn't, or is that, thinking back, I remember going through those discussions, et cetera, seeing all the plans, but.
Because there was no definition included with that particular program element, it would be hard to say whether anything would or would not be impacted by it. What we have today is the Rotary Club's kind of, I think, ideal facility based upon what they've envisioned in terms of having the two kitchens at either end, the ability to kind of partition it off so that you could have multiple groups using it at the same time. And I know they've pointed to an existing facility that's in Bluffton as kind of an example of the type of multi-use facility that they're shooting for. Beyond that, I would say that anything is open to discussions with both them and ultimately with council before we approve anything. But it's included here, I think, just kind of as an illustrative standard that they're looking to achieve.
Is the facility in Bluffton the same as what they're suggesting?
Similar. So it's only got the one kitchen there, but it's a kind of a main room that can be partitioned off and is available for a variety of different community-related
450
functions.
people?
Yeah, oh yeah, more than that at that particular facility. It's probably closer to 100 is what that particular one can accommodate.
Closer to 100 versus 450?
I think so, yeah. I'm trying to think.
Substantially smaller.
The meetings that I've been to, I can't think of one that's had more than 100 people there.
So they have two numbers, one that was theater style versus round table. How could, or do you know even how this facility size compares to the art center? How would this facility with a theater style seating be able to complement opportunities? The art center to use, it's another.
Sure, we can get that information. I don't know the square footage for the art center off the top of my head, but we could certainly look into that. And again, what is here in the materials is just a starting point for communication. We'd have to go a fairly long ways in designing a facility and a number of other things that are just not, part of this yet. But knowing kind of what the goal would be, which is to create that multi-purpose facility.
So other questions, and I'll let other people speak that I have on my list, have to do with cost and timing and programming, et cetera. So I will quit dominating the conversation and open it up to Alex. Questions, thoughts?
Thank you. And I understand completely that we're just starting the conversation. Okay. We have, through our master planning, identified that Mid-Island track more likely a good place for a community center. We've also identified that this is a true void within our community. I remember very recently that staff was looking to have a public engagement session, and they're looking for a place that had interior opportunities, and they searched particularly north end of the island, and they could not find one. Okay, so I think the need is absolutely grave, so I'm more than happy to have the discussion. I guess two things that I wanted to mention as we move forward. One is the Rotary Club has suggested that sort of a trade-off for this contribution would be that they are able to use the facility. And I want to make sure that we are also offering that opportunity to other nonprofits that may want to contribute, because from a timing standpoint, we could be 2 years down the road before we see a community center, and $750K will look different then than it does now. So offering that opportunity for other nonprofits to contribute, particularly if we're focusing on some of the gaps that we have in our community, I think that's important, that we're not necessarily closing the door to others, okay? The other thing is they've got some case studies associated in the packet as to where the demand is. They also have mentioned some case studies as to this being done before, i.e. the Celebration Park and Sandbox, right? Okay. Seems to me that as we are moving forward with park developments, okay, there may be other sort of sponsorship opportunities, and I'm not quite sure that we internally have a policy or guidelines or fundamentals that we want to use to get to the end game. So I just want to throw that out there as well, all right?
Patsy?
First of all, I always salute the Rotary Club. I grew up going to a Girl Scout camp called Camp Rotary. So I promise I won't sing the camp song. But we have wonderful service organizations in our community, Kiwanis, Rotary, just to name two. I know there are many more, and I'm not going to try to, because I'll leave out people. So definitely a great concept. But my questions are, and I see the draft resolution, I don't think, Madam Chair, I'm quite ready to to adopt the resolution, because I'm not sure Mid-Island Tract is the right location. I think that this town council needs to have more conversations about Mid-Island Tract. I'm not satisfied with that plan or the cost of that plan. And so that's why I want us to step back and take a look at that track again. I'm all about going back and dealing with storm drainage, but anything else right now, I think we need to have a bigger conversation about that. You know, thinking about a community center like this, I remember other jurisdictions during the days where you could find funding to build a branch library, a community meeting room, and a fire station all together. It's a great concept. I've seen it done, particularly where I used to work in the city of Asheville. If you ask Butch Keziah, he'll tell you about what his father did with them to build, you know, community centers. So something like that, it might be better to try to explore other opportunities. You know, in addition to the capital cost of construction, I know this proposal asked for the town to build the building, and then Rotary Club would raise the funds for furnishing and inside. But there's also operating costs. You know, where are we going to pay for this in the future? And then, as Mr. Brown has raised, what's going to be the policy about other folks using it? You know, there's the operational side of managing such a facility. So I think there's a lot more questions before I'd be willing to consider a resolution to authorize discussions for this proposal on the Mid-Island Tract. I'm okay with saying, yeah, go ahead and keep talking about it, but not that specific. And to Madam Chair's questions about, you know, the design of the facility, I think we do need to know more about that, and especially from the town's perspective. You know, what would, as Mr. Brown said, we search for a meeting place for some community engagement for the town. We're going to be going through district planning, and where can we have meeting spaces? And the other thing that I'm concerned about is I know that the town staff has outgrown this facility, and that, you know, we're leasing other spaces now for town staff to be housed. So I think it's part of a broader conversation. It's a great idea for a community center, but I think we need a little more time to think about all these kind of questions first. That's where
I think it's very generous and kind of the Rotary Club to propose this. Following up on Mrs. Bryson's comments, we've got the concept of various phases for development of Mid-Island. Phase one being not involving any construction, but kind of cleaning up the whole place.
Stormwater.
Where's phase one stand? Have we approved it?
Phase one has been approved. My understanding is that is moving forward. That includes stormwater, pathway stabilization, and I think restrooms are all involved in phase one.
So, I mean, in terms of how we are approaching this, sounds to me like a phase two question.
It is, but you have to understand, this is just asking, are we supportive of the concept? There is certainly a lot of detailed information that we're going to have to gather and bring back, and we're going to have a number of following discussions before we get to the point of saying, yes, it's going to be a 4,500 square foot building, and it's going to have this architecture, and it's going to go here. We're a long ways from that, but they're just asking conceptually in terms of partnering with them to build and identify a community center space. Is that something we're open to?
Has MKSK had an opportunity to look at this?
I don't believe so, no. No, this is something that we received from them and are bringing to you.
I think it's a great idea, but it's pretty clear it's not phase one.
Thank you. And I guess, you know, just, I probably said it in my initial comments, but a lot of these comments that were made by my colleagues are also on my list, control management, et cetera. And the point being well taken by Alex that a community center that has opportunity for a meeting space across nonprofits, et cetera, will be a welcome addition at some you're asking for us to make a recommendation through the resolution to the town council. I'm hearing that it's probably unlikely to succeed, but would someone like to make that motion?
Well, I would move that this is a question of, are we interested in this concept?
Well, that's it. So the resolution that's included in your packet, I think fairly clearly states, as Ms. Bryson indicated, that what we're authorizing is continued discussion. That's all we're supporting at this point in time.
I would move we have continued discussion.
It's actually, are hereby authorized to enter into discussion with the Rotary Club at the Hilton Head to establish a formal partnership proposal pertaining to creation and funding of a multi-use community center. I think I stand with Ms. Bryson that prior to doing that, I would like a little bit more information, timing in terms of phase 1, phase 2, et cetera.
Not phase 1, so it would be as part of phase 2 or subsequent phase. And
We-
I would add that.
Yeah, which I think Ms. Bryson would point out has not been approved in terms of execution. So in terms of timing, I couldn't tell you what the timing is going to be because that's going to be directed by council. What it sounds like is we need to let the Rotary group know that this is something that we're interested in, but we're not to the point of being able to have any kind of concrete discussions, particularly about a mid-island track location, until council has determined kind of what those next future phases for that property will include. And that if they want to consider looking at other sites, that we can certainly have that discussion and bring that information back if that's something that they're open to. But otherwise, that probably needs to occur first before we can continue down this path of looking at a multi-use center.
Without precluding the idea that Mid-Island very well may be, but how does it fit into those future phases? And very important for us to consider and look at because we do have a master plan that a considerable amount of time and effort and thought consideration was put into, so I don't want to disrupt.
Madam Chair, if I could, I know there's a motion on the floor. I'm not
President hasn't been seconded
not willing
yet.
to second it.
So is there a second for that motion?
Just for discussion purposes, I would like to second the motion.
Okay.
Okay. So before we take any action, can we discuss that? So, Mr. Cooper, can you sort of lay out next steps if this motion on the table is acted upon? And I'd like to understand how the full council plays into this since this is at the subcommittee.
Correct. So this is just a recommendation to continue this same discussion with full council. And at that level, it would be from a policy standpoint, is this concept of partnering with the Rotary Club, wherein the town would commit to building a facility of some size and design, and having the Rotary Club fundraise to that kind of dollar level that they indicated as part of that partnership. That's kind of that 5,000-foot discussion. And then assuming that council would be supportive of that, that's when we would start then going into more detail about the who, what, when, and where. And so that's what's indicated in the resolution is we would go work with them to start developing that more specific information that we would then bring back as part of a formal partnership that the town could then vote upon that has that more detailed information that I think they're looking for.
Motion fails, then you will not have any further discussion with the Rotary Club.
If that is the direction of the committee, then yes, we would just let them know that thank you for your interest, but we're not interested at this time.
Madam Chair, if I might speak to the motion. It's not that I'm not in favor of more discussions with the Rotary Club about the concept, but I am not willing to send this to the full town council who's going to ask the same kind of questions and go say we need more information before we're willing to act. So I would instead suggest that there be some more discussions and then bring it back to this committee and then see if there's something we could send forth to the town council, because I think it's way premature. I mean, I don't mind the full town council talking about it, but it seems like I'm not sure what we would talk about.
Well, there's no question it's early and it's premature, and we can't start until we begin discussions of phase 2. Part of the consideration. consideration is, it's not now, it's phased.
Yeah, if it's,
I don't want to cut them off. I don't want to discourage them. You got somebody there that's sitting around waiting to write a check. I don't want to tell them to go spend that money on something else.
right, for sure, yeah, and I'm not sure, I think Mr. Gruber mentioned, looking at other possible sites, and I have no idea what the status of commercial property is now on the island, but, maybe there's some space that needs to be rehabbed, and maybe that's a more appropriate space, I don't know. But I think, for me, the better thing for the community to consider is to say, continue the discussions, look at other possibilities, and have the staff look at other needs of the town at the same time, and before moving forward with the motion on the floor.
So what I would like is more information prior to relinquishing it to the full town council. So is there a way for us to do that? Is there a way to say, continue the discussions? You've heard a sampling of questions that we're interested in, thoughts that we've had, and then bring that back to us so that we have something more substantive
Absolutely.
to decide on prior to moving it forward as to town council, as Patsy says, to ask the same questions.
Yeah, if you can help me identify what that information is, we're happy to go out and get it and bring it back at a future meeting.
Need that now, or could we provide questions to you over the course of the next week?
That's fine, whatever the preference is, either one.
Is that acceptable to the members of the committee?
I think we have to have a vote on the motion on the floor unless the maker and the second are willing to withdraw it.
Before we vote no, I want to make sure that we're going to get something done here, because I do agree, I would love to have the conversation, and the Rotary Club is certainly come forth with a thought that is worthy and wanted by our community, but I just would like to have more substance to be able to work with prior to.
Alfred is not opposed. I'm willing to withdraw my second until we receive further information.
All right.
So if the committee then, so the motion has been made, the second has been withdrawn, the maker has agreed to withdraw the motion as well until we get additional information. And if I can ask our committee members to provide those questions and back to Josh, please copy all of us on the committee as well by this time next week, next Monday. Then you'll have something to bring us back again at a second attempt. So we'll have more to work with.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, thank you so
I
much.
only have one question. Can I tell you what it is now?
Sure, happy to write it down.
Anyone else who's prepared at this moment? That's
Can we
fine.
get MKS view?
Sure, we can get them to review it, but what are we having them review it for?
Up second phase.
Okay, well so let me think about that one for a minute. The answer is absolutely, we can have them review it. It's a question of what do we want them to review it for in terms of making a recommendation. If it fits with phase two.
That's what I'm interested in.
I got you, okay.
Right, and I would agree with that MKSK had a vision when they put together the concept, master plan concept. How does this scope, et cetera, fit within that vision?
Okay.
What would it impact if it's not? But I'll send you a list.
Madam Chair, I'm willing to give my list right now, too.
Okay, feel free.
First of all, for staff to give us a recommendation on what kind of need there is for a community center, and then what kind of need there is for town staff to be housed. What would be the proposal for operational cost and management? And I think it might be helpful to see the sandbox contract, if that's the one that we have now, that's the best example. And if there are any other, if there are commercial spaces that could be rehabbed for a community center.
Yeah.
Get some thought and send.
I'll wait, because it looks like Josh.
Well, the one that stuck in there was looking at the copy of the sandbox agreement, because that is an example, but we also have the example of the Island Recreation Center as well, which is where we build it, but when it comes to operational costs, they're paying for that out of their budget. Now, they do work with us as an affiliated agency, so I think there's a lot of flexibility there in terms of how we want to manage it. Do we want to be exclusively us? Do we want to manage it through Island Rec? And then the answers to those questions impact then the operational costs from whoever may be doing that management service. So,
And the reason I asked for sandbox is because I think the Island Rec contract is on the agenda for
Mhm.
finance administrative, so we already have that. That's why I was, because those two were mentioned in the staff report.
got it.
I'm quite sure if you wrote down my stuff from earlier or not.
Yes, needing to look at, from a policy standpoint, offer space to other nonprofits to use as well, in addition to the Rotary clubs. And then, I don't think this was yours particularly, but looking at, are there other parcels either vacant or developed that could be utilized for it?
I guess I'm going to sort of follow up on where I agree that we need to have flexibility, because some opportunities are going to look different than others, okay? But I think what council needs is sort of a template of the areas that we need to be concerned about when we're making these decisions, i.e. forward operating cost, i.e. Maintenance, scheduling, and so on, okay? Because they will look different, but some of these areas of concern will be consistent with any opportunity that we may have come before us, okay? So sort of understanding that, I think, will help these things move along a little easier.
Okay.
And Josh, I'll send my thoughts to you, but within the letter that was sent to us, the thoughtful letter from the Rotary, they would ask that the once built the community center would allow Island Rotary clubs to use the facility, weekly meetings, occasional special events without charge in perpetuity, and would hope that other nonprofit groups could use low to no cost functions on application, et cetera. So in my mind, when I read those statements, it sounds as though there's an expectation that the town would manage all of that. And that's, I don't think, that'll be one of my questions. I mean, I just don't think that sits necessarily within the scope of what we do generally. And I don't want to enlarge government, period, end of story, but also don't want to overburden any particular department that we currently have that this would fall into. So just questions that I'll put in writing and send to you.
Correct, and I can tell you that the answers to those could go a couple of different ways depending upon what council feels comfortable with. So let's say that you don't feel comfortable with us taking on that responsibility in-house. My recommendation would be we partner with Island Rec, who would be responsible for managing the reservations of that, like they do the reservations of other park properties. You know, that to me would be kind of a fairly easy and seamless thing to be able to do. Or we could look at, as part of our agreement with the Rotary Center, that they become responsible of managing the scheduling. And I mean, there's a couple different ways that we can go, all of which are really kind of, I don't want to say premature at this point, but we'd have to answer a number of questions about the building, where it's going to be located, what the purpose of it's going to be, before we get to those questions about who's going to have access to it and what time is the schedule and all that. I mean, that's
Just addressing it because it comes
Yes.
up in the letter.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then do you have enough from us with regard to this? Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
And thank you all for your comments. If there are there any other public comments? With either one of you? Ann?
And this is still about the use of glyphosates and everything. This sort of reminds me of when Dean Moss had a meeting for 300 people and the press, and he wanted to go to the Savannah River for water. I didn't want to go to the Savannah River because there was tritium in the water. And at the time, I was not on the South Island Water Board like I am now. But I fought against it because tritium is what makes things glow in the dark. It came down to the Savannah River from the bomb plant, historically. Anyway, so Beaufort Jasper went to the Savannah River. They sold the Savannah River water to Broad Creek Public Service District and PSD number 1. We, the South Island Public Service District, never bought it because I was on the board by then and I fought tooth and nail to keep us off the river water. And now, and because our board wanted to go with it because it was cheaper at the time. It's all about the money. And now it's not cheaper. Now the Savannah River water costs more and it has PFAS in it now. And so far there is nothing that will filter PFAS out of your water. If you're lucky enough to live on the south end, you're lucky enough. So this whole thing to me is not about, to me the data's in, it's all about poisons. Do we want poisons or not? The cost to me is the cost of human life, not how much it costs to spray organic things that you can eat that won't kill you. So, that's my main feeling. I think we should ban it. I think we should be allowed to ban it. I don't understand that part, but thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, anything from the committee? All right, we are adjourned.